This is the Weather Lounge here at WeatherWorks.
Hello there and welcome back to the Weather Lounge. I'm your host, meteorologist Brad Miller, and as always, I would like to thank you for listening to our podcast as we come to you from our WeatherWorks headquarters located in Hackettstown, New Jersey. And joining me for today's episode is the one and only meteorologist Mike Mahalik. Hello there, Mike.
Hey, Brad, what's going on? I mean, that was a weak intro, man. I
I
mean,
know.
where's the descriptions? I mean,
Well,
usually you have something for me to some crazy off the
I
wall.
know. Well, I haven't been on the last couple of podcasts. You and Mike wouldn't let me join in, so I felt
Oh
like
well,
Rudolph. I felt like Rudolph. He wouldn't let me play in any reindeer games.
well,
I figure I'd lay low on this one before.
well. I mean, why are you going on all these vacations? Come on.
I'm not. Oh, it's summertime. We all got to get some time off here, but I'll come up with some good ones for you next time, I promise. But you know what? We are going to revisit a few important topics this week, Mike, and we're going to talk about some new stuff as well. I think it's going to be a good episode.
Yeah, so in this podcast, we're going to kind of revisit what you did in a webinar not too long ago here, Brad. And you talked a lot about summer weather and some tips and some safety tips that go along with it.
Yeah. I think it's a good topic to go back to, and like I said, we'll probably talk about a few things we've already had in a previous podcast, and also some new stuff. And I think everyone's going to like the topics going forward. So without further ado, let's get started. And I guess the first thing to talk about, it is summertime, is the heat, and that's probably the biggest concern for a lot of folks that work outside. And not only that, when you go outside, you're doing activities, and you're in the sun for a long part of the day and things like that. So put on the sunscreen. That's probably always number one. You got to get that sunscreen on. But then, of course, when the heat starts building, it usually is accompanied by humidity, and that makes it feel a lot hotter than it really is. The dew point, that's another buzzword in the summertime. We hear about 60-degree dew point, 65. When that dew point gets to like 70 degrees and higher, that's when it's kind of oppressive outside. You don't want to really go outside. Like the heat kind of hits you right in the face as soon as you walk in, almost like when you get into a car, and it's just like been baking in there. But again, it could turn into some serious issues if folks don't, take breaks and drink plenty of water. Mike, you used to work outside in landscaping too. I mean, it gets hot.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly gets hot, and that day drags on when you have those heat indexes, in the mid 90s, upper 90s, stuff like that. I remember there was one day when I was working landscaping where it was, I think the actual air temperature might have been 100 degrees and it was humid also. So, I mean, we were talking about heat indices, reaching 105, 110. I mean, it was pretty brutal. And I remember the way I battled it because, it was hard to keep, even with a cooler, it was hard to keep your stuff cold, like water and stuff like that to hydrate. And I used to take a gallon of water and I used to freeze half of it and then fill the rest up in the morning,
That's
with
smart.
yeah, and then it was like a giant ice cube in, in the gallon of water, and that usually helped out. And so you had some cold water to drink all day long, but yeah, I mean, a lot of heat related injuries you got to watch out for, like heat exhaustion, and heat stroke.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the bad one. Heat exhaustion, you can usually take care of, and you feel like, all right, well, you kind of feel faint, or you get tired quick, you're a little weak, and that's when your body's telling you, hey, you better get inside here because things aren't going good inside your body right now. It's too hot. But yeah, the heat stroke, that's when your body's kind of shutting down. Basically,
you've gone too far at that point.
exactly.
Yeah, that's an immediate trip to go see the doctor or head to the hospital and get yourself taken care of. But a lot of those heat exhaustion things, I mean, I know, obviously if you're working outside, you're going to have heavy sweating and stuff like that. I mean, that's going to happen, but once it escalates,
Yeah, when you stop sweating and it's still 100 out, that's that's when the problems begin. And you know what? One other thing, Mike, is a lot of folks don't realize. Hopefully, they do. When you take your pets for a walk. Don't take them for a walk at 2 in the afternoon, you know, after it's been like 95, 96 degrees, because that pavement gets so hot. An air temperature of 77 degrees, asphalt can actually get to 125 in full sun, and yeah, it's not good. And if you get it to like the 80s, and that hot asphalt, gets like 120, or 130, 140. So basically, if you can't walk on it with your feet, or you touch it with your hands, then their paws can get burned too. It's just one of those things. So
I can relate that to when I was a kid. I used to have a friend who lived across the street from me who had a pool, and I remember a few times I didn't take flip flops along, and then I had to walk across that street with my bare feet, and I was like, "Oh no!" I had to run real quick, and just think about that. Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
you know what I hate the most? I mean, everyone likes to go to the beach, and when you go to the shore and stuff
Ooh,
like that,
yeah,
that sand when you walk around on your bare feet, like, oh my God,
yeah. That dry sand when you first get on the. Ooh, man, that's
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 ridiculous.
brutal, brutal. I remember I was down at a trip down in Sandbridge, Virginia, which is right on the northern Outer Banks. And man, it was so hot the one day that I didn't know if I was going to get to the beach at that
Yeah, no,
time.
I know what
The
you're
sand
talking
keep
about.
getting in. Wow. So anyway, but yeah, so if you're going to be out in the heat, obviously the things that you want to think about are staying hydrated, avoiding stuff that's going to dry you out, like caffeine or caffeinated beverages, stuff like that. Loose fitting, lightweight clothing, light colored clothing is always a good idea. Plenty of breaks, get in the shade when you can, and a nice wide brim hat a lot of times
Yeah,
helps out too.
I almost always
So
wear a hat when I'm out there. Plus, I'm going bald too, so you can't,
well,
burns your
you
head.
can't get well, you got to rub that sunscreen in is what you
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
do.
I know the sunscreen.
You get it like real thick on there so you
I
got a
just
nice
put a hat
white.
on. All right, moving on. I don't want to talk about my baldness. Hey, severe weather now. That's, of course, another one that everyone likes to talk about and doesn't like to be dealing with, though. But yeah,
Yeah, that goes along with the heat. Obviously, you have your heat, you have your humidity. It's really kind of gross out there, but that's a lot of good fuel to develop thunderstorms. So when you have that type of air mass in place, if you add a cold front in there, or maybe even a sea breeze or lake breeze boundary or something like that, that is your trigger to kind of get things going as far as thunderstorms are concerned. And when you have that much fuel, that much heat and humidity, a lot of times these things can go strong to severe very quickly. And you can deal with obviously damaging winds, lots of lightning with these severe thunderstorms, and even tornadoes at times, during the summer.
well, then another thing that rhymes with tornadoes. That, what is it called?
Derechos?
We got to talk about derechos. Yeah.
Yeah, derechos are, big, long-lasting windstorms that pretty much cover a swath of 250 miles or more, I believe. And yeah, I mean, those just kind of sustain themselves. It's basically a thunderstorm complex that just kind of sustains itself across the center of the country. And they can be quite damaging. There was one in 2012 that was really bad.
10 years ago, it was, just about almost to the day. It was back in late June, I think the 29th and 30th of June, the one that kind of raked its way from the upper Midwest right to the Mid Atlantic.
Yeah, all the way through Virginia. So yeah, I mean that was a very notable derecho, and those wind speeds can get quite high in those. But I think one of the most important things about severe weather, yes, we're looking for these damaging winds, the hail, and things like that. But is the watches versus the warnings, and we've talked about this many times, Brad. And there's still some that have a little difficulty distinguishing between what's the difference between a watch and what's the difference between a warning. So one of the quick and dirty kind of explanations is something called you can kind of relate it to a taco, believe it or not.
Yeah, I like this. Actually, Mike Priante, he was or one of
Our
he's on here,
producer.
of course. Yeah, and he's on here too quite a bit.
Yeah,
I
and
like this
so
idea.
yeah, the you could kind of relate watches and warnings to tacos, right? So if you have a taco watch, you have all the ingredients in front of you. You have the tortillas, you have the shells, you have the cheese, the meat, the lettuce, the tomatoes, the salsa, whatever you're going to put on your taco. So all everything's there, but there's still not a taco, right? It's just all separated. But then once you put that together and you have all your items in that shell, and you have your full taco made, that's a taco warning because there's a taco there. Before you just had ingredients, now you have a full taco made.
The ingredients have all come together now, and that's how you get your warning, which means usually something is occurring or is about to very shortly. So
Right. So let's relate that back to severe weather watches and warnings. So if there's a severe thunderstorm watch, that means the conditions are favorable in the atmosphere for severe thunderstorms with inch diameter hail or 58 mile per hour or greater winds. Same thing with a tornado. If there's a tornado watch, that means you're watching, the conditions are there that you could get severe thunderstorms to develop that could produce tornadoes. Now, once you have your warning that flashes across the screen, usually you get that scrolling thing on the bottom of your news channel or whatever it is.
your phones go off now. Yep.
Yep. That means that there is a severe thunderstorm that has developed. So it's there now. It's the taco. And it's capable or has a history of producing these damaging winds and hail. And the same thing with a tornado. We have something either radar confirmed that there's a radar signature that a tornado is within a thunderstorm, or one has been spotted by somebody on the ground. So that's the big difference. The watch, everything's ready. The warning, it is there, and we're have to take cover to get safe inside. So
One thing I got to ask Mike about is if you were a part of the webinar last month, there was a picture of that taco watch part, all the ingredients, and I think there's a radish in there. I've never heard of anyone putting radishes on their taco. Have you?
no,
I think it's a radish.
yeah, that looks like radishes cut up. I don't know who's making these tacos.
Hey, I'm not gonna knock it. Maybe it's good. Yeah, maybe it's like well, radishes are like kind of peppery and crunchy, so maybe
Yeah,
I have to try that.
I mean avocado. I mean is
Yeah, well, that's guacamole. Is it gonna make guacamole out of avocado?
there was like slices of avocado there. I actually had a taco the other night that was actually had avocado in it, which is quite
Nice.
good.
Yeah, they are good. I like avocado. I like to eat them just plain, but all right, let's move on here. We're getting hungry. All right, of course, the other thing that goes right along with severe weather and thunderstorms is lightning, and that's the one thing that you really got to be aware of. Get the kids inside. You start to hear the rumble in the distance, and that's usually a good, you know, idea that you're going to get something shortly, and you got to start thinking about packing things up over on the golf course, and we'll talk about that later. But one thing, Mike, that is our pet peeve. A lot of meteorologists,
Your
um,
pet peeve, maybe.
well, I think it's a lot of people. I think it's a lot of meteorologists. It's spelled lightning, not lightening. You see that a lot in a lot of places. I think I've done it a few times too, a long time ago. Now I make sure that I never do it.
Yeah, I talked to my wife too, and she's a teacher, so she picks up on these things very quickly. If somebody spells something wrong, she has a real big problem with your and your
You were in there and there, yeah.
and she it's like nails on the chalkboard for her when she sees those misspellings or incorrect usages. So yeah, so I think what Brad's saying is just yeah, it is lightning. It's not lightening. It's not you know
There's always the extra e in there, yeah.
yeah. So it's yeah, just a little thing to just be on aware of, but otherwise, I mean, yeah, I mean. there's this old saying that they have: when thunder roars, head indoors. And that's because if you can hear thunder, that means lightning is close enough to potentially strike in your area.
And really, I guess a way to find out how far away a storm is, and it's the old. I think I used to do this as a kid. I learned about this. You count the seconds between the lightning and the thunder, then you divide by 5. So if you see the lightning and you count to 10, and then you hear the thunder, that means the storm's about 2 miles away, which at that point is pretty close. So you don't want to mess around. You got to probably get inside. And then, of course, you get those storms that are basically on top of you, the lightning, and then the thunder follows immediately after the lightning. And that's when you know the storm is, basically above. And hopefully by then you're already inside.
Yeah, when it sounds like cannons are going off around you, it's not a good thing. I mean, please, uh, get get yourself to a safe area, and by that I mean, hey, get inside and don't hang out by the window and look at the storm and
Yeah.
watch the lightning. I mean, as a meteorologist, yeah, pretty interested in that sort of stuff, so I probably have failed that safety lesson a little bit, watching a storm come in, and I try my best to stay safe, obviously, out there, because lightning is a real danger out there, and a lot of lightning strikes happen per year, and deaths do happen from them.
And lightning's hot. I mean, obviously you think lightning's hot, but it's
It's not hot, it's cold, right?
it's
Just
hotter than the surface of the sun, but it can reach a temperature of 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's like I can't even fathom that. I mean, you think about just hot boiling water, and it's 212 degrees. So, can you imagine a lightning bolt that's 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit? Jeez,
yeah, and I think when they say about the runder, the runder,
the Runder.
the Runder roar. I was trying to say thunder roars. I think when they say that, it's because there's times when lightning could pretty much come out of nowhere, and that's basically a bolt from the blue, they like to call. And those can, you know, uh, extend almost 20 miles away from a thunderstorm, I believe. So that's why if you could hear any thunder, you are in range, basically.
And we see that on the radar. I mean, when we have our lightning detection up and things like that, the line of storms, like you said, maybe 20 miles away, and then they see a lightning bolt like out, like there's no way that can be right, but it's true. Sometimes they could travel that far, and unfortunately, it's just as deadly as anything else. Any other lightning, it's the same.
Hey, and we were talking about a bit of a pet peeve earlier. Another one that I have that's a little more of a pet peeve, and that's heat lightning.
When's the heat lightning gonna hit my backyard?
Yeah. So yeah, there's no such thing as heat lightning. I know it's kind of in common language, when you're having a thunderstorm at night and you see, flashes in the distance, but you're not hearing any thunder or anything. You're saying, well, it's just so hot that, it's causing lightning. Well, that's not really the case. So sorry to burst your bubble about heat lightning, but what heat lightning really is just a thunderstorm that may be very far away, might be 50, even 100 miles away, and you're able to see the lightning, but you just don't hear the thunder because it's too far away, and the sound wave doesn't get to you. So really, heat lightning is just thunderstorms well off in the distance. So just keep that in mind next time you hear heat lightning. That yeah, it's not really a real phenomena.
And really, it's only a phenomena that can happen at night because it's this same idea. If the storm's 50 miles away during the daytime, you just can't see the lightning from that storm. But of course, at night when it's dark, the light travels and you can actually see that storm then. And that's what, again, like Mike was saying, it's just can't hear the thunder, but same idea. But and lightning can strike the same place twice. It's that old adage. Oh well, lightning can't strike, and it can hit something, and then next 5 minutes later, same thing can happen. It's just, again, it's trying to find the closest or shortest distance from the cloud to the ground in the strongest storms like that. I mean, it doesn't always have to have cloud to ground lightning, but when they do happen.
But I mean, yeah, your cell phone tower is going to have the a better chance to get hit by lightning than something like
Well, the Empire State Building in New York too. I mean, that's probably been and hit thousands upon thousands of times.
And the funny thing is too is that if you watch lightning videos in slow motion, and I'm sure you could find it on YouTube, the same bolt will send charges down that same path a couple of times. So a lightning strike a lot of times isn't just one solitary strike; it's multiple discharges along the same pathway that it found from the cloud to the ground. Um, but one thing we're talking about strikes, Brad, and I know you really like this one graphic from the National Weather Service that talks about ways you can get struck by lightning. And I know you like the little animation going along with that, right?
Yeah, the little guy there getting hit. Again, it's not a real guy, so it's okay. It's just
Yeah, it's like a cartoon guy, but he has his hand out kind of weird, like he's Michael Jackson or
yeah, yeah.
something, and like he's doing some sort of dance. But I guess they're trying to show that the lightning or the electricity is coursing through his body. I don't know what they're trying to go for there. But if you do look that one up online, ways that lightning can strike, and you type in like National Weather Service or something too, you'll probably come up with that graphic.
Yeah, it's there's different ways. Direct strike. Actually, a tree can get struck, and then the electricity can travel through the root system if you're close enough. Same thing if you're by that's why you don't want to be by a fence, because if lightning can strike a tree, then it travels along the fence line, the metal, and that's just not good. Either way, just don't be outside anyway, in any thunderstorm.
And one thing that is probably one of the most uh, things that maybe people wouldn't think about is the ground current. So I actually know of a story of someone who this actually ended up fatal for, and basically it wasn't because of lightning; it was because of a power station that was damaged. But the ground current, the grass was wet. You go out there with bare feet or something like that, and the ground current basically, ended up getting this person, and electrocuting him. And that's what can happen with lightning too. So if you have bare feet, that's even worse because you're going to get your conduction right through. But if you had some rubber-soled shoes, you might have a better chance in a ground current situation. But
And we deal with the lightning here at WeatherWorks. I mean, every day, especially in the summertime.
right, and we have clients that do like to have warnings about lightning, and there's several stadiums that are interested in that.
We have several up and down the I-95 corridor. Yeah.
Some professional football teams that are interested in lightning and other sports teams, because they want to keep their players safe, and anybody in the crowd needs to be safe too. So yeah, we do have ways that we can kind of predict when lightning would be most likely, and it works very well too. But enough about lightning. I think the main thing is, hey, get inside if there's
Yeah.
going to be
Don't mess
lightning, and if
around.
you're on the golf course,
Like you
get
were that one
inside.
time you told
No,
us about.
I don't know what you're talking about,
I
but
think I did. I've done that too. I mean, you think
I
of the
did not
Caddyshack.
stop under a halfway house or whatever it was. Um,
You think of the Reverend or whoever, the guy from Caddyshack, when he
yeah.
gets struck by lightning at the end or at the end of his round because he was
Yeah.
going for the course record.
Yeah, that was the funny thing. What did Bill Murray say? I don't think the heavy stuff's going to come down for quite some time. And it was already heavy rain and
Oh yeah.
horrible. But anyway, yeah, just get inside if lightning's around. But the other thing we got to worry about with severe weather is hail. And we always like to say stuff like, oh, what the hell is happening out there? That's I know that's
Uh,
a silly dad joke, but the one thing that we need to cover about hail is that it's not the same as sleet. Okay. Hail is a different process than sleet. Sleet is what you have in the winter. It looks like little BBs or something like that, that are little frozen balls that kind of accumulate. Um, and hail is in the summertime, for the most part, has to do with thunderstorm updrafts where, you know, you get frozen raindrops and they're lifted into the thunderstorm, and they kind of um, are rhymed by more and more water, and they get bigger and bigger until they overcome the updraft of a thunderstorm and they fall down because they're just too heavy to be held up by the cloud.
And I think the coolest thing about sleet is, on the meteorological side is when you get some of these big ones like in Midwest, and we'll talk about the sizes here in a minute.
You are talking about hail, correct?
We're talking about hail, yes, yes.
I heard you say sleet, Brad. I'm gonna
No,
come through
did I?
this
No, I
line.
meant to say
Yeah.
hail. But when they take like a saw and they check they saw it right in half, and you can see the cross section of the hailstone. You can see it's almost like rungs of a tree. The rings on a
Like
tree,
tree rings, yeah.
tree rings, and it's same thing. That's how many times it's gone up and down in the cloud, and like Mike was saying, you get an extra layer of ice until it can overcome the updraft and just fall to the ground. But yeah, it's and hail's no fun to be around either. I'll tell you. I mean, we're here in the Northeast. We don't get hail much bigger than a quarter. Sometimes you get a little bit bigger than that. But I couldn't imagine living out in the Midwest or like the plains where they get these baseball and softball size hail. I mean, that's like damaging.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it doesn't take much to damage. I mean, once you get above a quarter size for hail, I know we had a hailstorm here in eastern Pennsylvania the one time, and they had a lot of, hail sales and stuff like that going on at the local car dealerships because everything was dented up. And but yeah, some of that hail out in the Midwest. I mean, talking about baseball-sized hail, softball-sized hail. I mean, that's crazy. And there's a lot of videos out there that you can search. I know there's a pretty famous one that I remember seeing. It looked like somebody kept throwing like giant rocks into a pool, and it was just amazing. I mean, it's not only the car damage and the house damage, but also crops out there could certainly be damaged.
Yeah, unfortunately, some farmers can lose a whole field in just one afternoon if a bad storm comes through with big hail. Not to mention your roof on your house. I mean, I've seen hail video of like hailstones so big that they actually come through people's roofs and they go into the attic and things like that. I mean, it's just like,
Pretty amazing stuff. So yeah, if hail is around in the thunderstorm, please go inside on that one. You don't want to get hit in the head.
and yeah, and it's just for the record. And speaking of records, the largest hailstone ever recorded in the United States occurred in South Dakota, a town called Vivian, on July 23rd, 2010, and it measured 8 inches in diameter. Could you imagine a hailstone 8 inches wide? I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, that's like a small dinner plate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Hitting you. So, um, yeah, that's amazing.
That's when you go inside and get your baseball helmet on, or just don't be outside.
Don't they call that like gorilla hail or something like
Something
that?
like that. Yeah, it's
I,
crazy.
I believe that's what some of the storm chasers call it, and there's definitely storm chaser videos out there of.
Well, there's that one chaser too that his car is like always dinged up bad, and he has to replace the windshield like every other week because it gets cracked and shattered due to hail. Because if you're gonna go find a tornado, then you're probably gonna hit some hail somewhere along the way. Because that most storms that are producing tornadoes are producing hail somewhere within the storm as well.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously hail is a threat, but how about next, Brad? What about flooding? That is one of the biggest threats we do have when we in the summer season.
Yeah, I mean that's of course, yeah, and the one saying that everyone should know, and which don't not everyone follows. Turn around, don't drown. I mean, you never want to drive through a flooded roadway. The road could be washed out underneath, and it could be even your local roads that you drive every single day. You don't know what's going on underneath it. And not only that, if the road's flooded out, if it's moving water, just 6 inches of moving water can knock you over. A foot of water can float a car. 2 feet if you have a truck or an SUV, and once that car or a truck or anything gets inundated with the water underneath, there's nothing you can do. Once it starts to float, you are at the mercy of wherever it takes you now. There's no turning back to where, oh, I think I can. You're done. So you just gonna, unfortunately, gotta go with it, and then hopefully you don't get stranded, or something worse happens.
Yeah, and don't take that lightly either. I mean, think about when you're at the shore or something like that, and you get that undertow that you feel when those waves are coming in, and that water's rushing out, and how hard is that to stand there for a little while that
Oh, I think I've been knocked over when you're like, you're waving to someone, maybe, and maybe you're up to your knees just in, and then that next wave kind of comes
oh
in and actually forces you towards the beach, and you fall over. And again, that's the power of the water. And that's just a little bit on you. Can you imagine, rushing water and ooh.
it is it is interesting when you are turning around. You don't turn your back to the ocean, man, because
Yeah, they always say, what's it? Don't ever turn your back to the ocean.
I've gotten smacked in the back a few times by some giant waves that kind of seem to come out of nowhere, and that certainly gives you a little sense of the power of water. And I know a lot of people are probably guilty about driving through, um, you know, areas of water, and you know, you may think that it's shallow and it might look shallow, but really you don't know what happened underneath. If that road got washed out in any way, you know, you're not going to be able to see that until you, unfortunately, are in the center of that and get caught up
Then
in it.
it's too late.
Hmm.
It all comes down to just basically it's flash flooding and poor drainage flooding and things like that. So it's usually when you get those you know rates of rainfall, 1, 2, 3 inches per hour, which is usually accompanied with a thunderstorm and things like that. And that's how we get to these points where these poor drainage, road flooding issues start to pop up in spots.
Right, right. And a lot of times it's thunderstorms traveling over the same area, basically time after time. And we like to call that training when it comes to the thunderstorm activity. Um, yeah, I mean,
We
so
and we see it every summer, even in even the spring and fall too. But definitely during the summer when you get these slow moving big thunderstorms, and they can produce, and you can easily get 2, 3 inches of rain within 45 minutes, and then 2 miles away, hardly anything fell. Maybe you got a light shower and barely wet the ground. So while they're isolated at times, they can, of course, create these localized areas of flooding that you just can't do anything about.
yeah, but then other times you have stuff like a tropical system that might, cause a lot of the flooding issues. And a lot of times in the Northeast, we might have not a hurricane impacting directly, but we might have what's left of a hurricane moving through the area and really dropping a lot of rain. There's a lot of examples of that happening. I mean, there's Ivan, there's Floyd. If you go back in history, that caused a lot of river flooding. A
Well,
lot of
Agnes was just this past year. I was more back towards Pennsylvania. It was a 50-year anniversary of Agnes,
Yeah, that was a huge flooding event up
for
here.
Susquehanna. Yep, yeah, and in Delaware, I think too, as well.
Yeah, so definitely tropical systems we have to watch. I mean, one of the more recent ones was Ida,
That was
and
just
that,
last year. Yep.
yeah, I mean that dropped 4 to 8 inches of rain basically from eastern Pennsylvania and Maryland all the way through Connecticut,
Right.
and
I think that was right before Labor Day weekend last year. It was like a Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that.
yeah, and so these definitely need to be, watched very carefully when they come up the coast, especially if you had a lot of rainfall leading up to it, because that certainly makes it um, a little bit more exacerbated, I
Yeah,
suppose.
and the most unfortunate thing I think about Ida is anybody that dies in any kind of tropical system or any kind of weather related system is very unfortunate, of course. When Ida made landfall along the Gulf Coast, there was some storm surge and they had wind damage and things like that. But the worst part I still think is more people died in New Jersey from Ida and again, this wasn't a direct impact. It was like Mike was saying, just all the flooding that came along with I guess a tropical system that really doesn't even have much wind anymore, but it was producing so much rainfall, and unfortunately, more people died in New Jersey than where the storm actually made landfall at as a hurricane. Um, and that's just, it's just yes, I couldn't believe that, unfortunately, and there were so many issues with Ida last year, and hopefully we don't have to deal with that again.
Talking along the lines of flooding, coastal flooding is certainly more of an issue too when it comes to direct impacts of a tropical system, or even a nor'easter can cause this. But basically, what causes the coastal flooding issues is the persistent onshore winds and high tides that will, create this coastal flooding. And a lot of times when you have a tropical system moving in, you have some sort of storm surge, which is basically the push of extra water that hurricane is bringing with it to add to those high tides. So that's one of the biggest problems when it comes to hurricanes. I mean, a lot of people think of the wind, that is the big damaging aspect, but really the water is more of the issue when it comes to major hurricanes.
Yeah, and that's why they, when there's a storm or a hurricane that's approaching a coastal area, I mean that's why evacuations are needed, and the hurricane center, really, they put out that hurricane watch or warning, and that's time that these folks, and believe it or not, when I the first year we moved to Charleston, um, this is going back, several years, but in 1998, you mentioned Floyd earlier, and we had no idea what to do. It was our first summer down there, and they're like, "Well, you're gonna have to evacuate." So I was like, "Evacuate?" So we ended up sitting in that Floyd fiasco, as I call it, when they were trying to get people, away from the coastal parts of South Carolina and Georgia, because at the time that's where the storm was supposed to make landfall, and it took, I don't know if anyone's understands, the geography of South Carolina and Charleston, but it's only about an hour and a half from Charleston to I-95, and basically, which is in Columbia. They're trying to get people to get to I-95, and then you can go north or south and alleviate the traffic. It took people, when we actually got off on a side road, it took a lot of people 5 to 6 hours to travel what would normally take about an hour and a half, and people got stuck, and it was just, it was known as the Floyd fiasco. If you want more information, just kind of look it up. But it was, and I think that's what led to a lot of highways reversing, um, you know, the east or west, the opposite side of the roadway. They would actually make sure that that was going all out instead of in, and it wouldn't, just give you twice as much area to travel away from. So I think it kind of started then. It's going back to 1998, I think. So it was crazy. I'll tell you, Floyd fiasco, maybe 99. I can't remember.
But talking about hurricanes, let's talk a little bit, Brad, about hurricane preparedness. What can we do? What could our listeners do if you are in the path of a hurricane as we head later in the summer and into the fall? What can they do about it?
I mean, it's just a lot of stuff that you would have to prepare for. Yeah, and a lot of these things you can actually have ready to go. Including myself, I'm not prepared as much as I should be, but a lot of folks wait to the last minute, and then it gets to be too late. But it's the basics. If you're going to lose power, you got to have water, food, flashlight, and medications, and you want to gather all this stuff. And especially if you're going to leave, you got to have all this kind of prepared, have your evacuation route or plan in place if you do live near the coast, and also cash. A lot of folks think, oh, I can just use credit, but if there's power out somewhere, or if you need gas, you, the gas pumps. Well, first of all, the gas pumps aren't going to work anyway because there's no electricity. But a lot of folks won't be able to use credit card machines. So if you got to buy stuff, you should have some cash with you at least too. That's the one thing a lot of folks don't even think about.
Yeah, it's great to have all these things prepared. Looking into this year, though, um, what are we expecting as far as the number of storms? I know we have. Um, there's been a little bit of activity so far this year, but as we get into the heart of the season, what kind of numbers are we looking at? I know our long range team has worked on that, and you had a little bit um, uh, of experience with this forecast.
Yeah, I mean, WeatherWorks, we're thinking 15 to 19 name storms. Like you said, Mike, it was kind of a slower start to the season. I think a couple name storms for
Well, it
name
wasn't
storms.
really, if you think about
Yeah,
it
you're
though.
right. You're right. It's normal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, recently in the last couple of seasons, we've been having early storms that are much earlier than really what typically happens. So having a slow buildup this year is kind of like normal, which is good. That's what it's supposed to happen.
The only thing I'm worried about though is if things stay slow for a while, then everything's kind of percolating down there in the main development region as we call it, which is the southern Atlantic, between going towards the equator and down the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean. All these areas are just there's so much there's so much energy and heat content that if it's untouched, then when something does go through there's going to be tons of fuel because that's what the tropical systems they need. They need that the water above 80 degrees and low shear, which is not much in the way of wind that can kind of it allows for the system to build vertically. But yeah, so it's but again, it only takes one to make it a memorable year. But WeatherWorks, we're looking at 15 to 19 name storms we're expecting this year. 6 to 10 of those to become hurricanes, and 2 to 4 of those to become major hurricanes, which is Category 3 or higher.
I guess one of the other unfortunate things that are coming out of this season's outlook are is the fact that East Coast landfalls might be a little bit more favored than they are in a typical year. And not to say that, hey, we're going to have a Sandy type event. But it should kind of be in the back of your mind that hey, if we get some of these hurricanes developing, that there might be a better chance of these things but directed more towards the coast as we head through the season, especially as we head into the peak of the season, what usually happens in the September timeframe.
Right, and it's always timing. It's the trough ridge pattern. It all depends on what's going on when that system develops and where it's at. If you get high pressure, it starts to build over New England, and you get that storm or system that's maybe trying to work its way towards the East Coast, and you get that just because of the circulation around the high. It may actually trap the storm, if you will, and shove it back towards the coast and not let it escape out into the open Atlantic. So and you mentioned it earlier, Mike. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary. Hard to believe of Hurricane Sandy. And you of all people, I mean, you were at WeatherWorks then. I wasn't working for WeatherWorks yet, and you have some stories that were October this year, 10 years. Hard to believe.
Yeah, I can't believe that was 10 years ago, honestly. I've told my stories a few times, I believe, on this podcast so far, but
I don't think it ever gets old though. I think
yeah.
people, you know what it's like when I live. Remember to bring up Charleston again. When I lived down there, everyone talks about Hugo. If you sit down with somebody that's lived there all their lives and you talk, they will tell you stories for an hour about Hugo. And the same thing up here when you start to mention Sandy and people that lived through it and forecasted it too as meteorologists, they just have story and they have new stories that you probably may have never heard before. But as I guess it was I couldn't believe it when I saw it, and I was down south then, just watching it evolve and unfold up here, and the New York City with the tides, and oh my God, the flooding was ridiculous.
Yeah, into the subway and everything like that that was going on there. And I think one of the things that impressed me the most with that storm was the wind and how far inland the wind got. I just remember I was staying at a local hotel near our office because if meteorologists would have went home, they probably wouldn't have gotten back in with the road closures and everything and the down trees and wires and things that went all over. But I just remember sitting at the hotel room and just listening to the wind, and I was like, man, I have never heard the wind howl that strong before. And every time it howled like that, then you'd hear things breaking and you're thinking to yourself, well, what's breaking? I don't understand. And it was actually trees and branches and stuff like that that were just constantly snapping, and you could hear it in the distance. And it was an eerie time because that did happen at night too. So I remember coming into work and basically the power was out everywhere. So everything was more dark than usual. And it was almost like a creepy sort of like,
And it was October. I mean, it was October too. It's coming up on Halloween.
yeah, it was just like a creepy sort of feeling, like, what just happened. I can't, the only lights I have are my headlights of the car, and that's it. And that's one amazing storm.
There couldn't have been a lot of people out too. It was just like a lot of fire and rescue to it
Oh
at
yeah,
that point.
there wasn't much out, anybody out at all. I mean, really, we were the only people. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the strongest storms that's ever occurred in the Northeast. I mean, there was a hurricane back in 1938 that was a bit stronger with pressure, north of Cape Hatteras. So I think it was a 941 pressure, but the pressure as it made landfall for Sandy was 946, so it wasn't too far off of that. And that's just an amazingly low pressure because everybody likes to talk about the superstorm in 93 in the Northeast. And even when that went over, uh, you know, Philadelphia, the pressure there was 963 millibars, which is, almost 20 millibars higher than what Sandy was. So it's just it was just an amazing system. I don't think we're going to see anything like that again. Let's hope I didn't jinx that.
Oh,
But
wiped out. I used to go to Seaside Heights growing up as a kid because I grew up in New Jersey. I mean, it wiped out the whole pier right there. They had to redo it. It's just it's just unheard of, and just to see the like you said, I remember just watching it from down south and just seeing like you said, the subways and everything. Just it was just crazy. I mean, you would never think to see that kind of stuff in the Northeast.
no, and it was funny how far, like I talked about the winds that traveled inland. I mean, even Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is far inland from the New Jersey shoreline, 81 miles an hour they had a gust, reach. So that's pretty far inland to be seeing winds of that magnitude. And it was impressive. And I got to say, the house that I did live in never lost power somehow. Um, you know, randomly the power went out when a transformer just broke randomly, and that was during a nice day. And for some reason in Sandy we didn't lose power. So I don't know how that happened, but somehow we made that. And top winds with Sandy over 90 miles an hour in parts of Long Island.
Yeah, it was
So
ice slip came in at like 90. That was right around the weather service there in New York, and they measured that. But yeah, I mean, it's even like Sussex up in northwest New Jersey, 75 miles an hour. Newark topped off at like 80. So and you know what, and the rain, the rain, of course, it was variable, but there were some spots that picked up over 10 inches of rain. South Jersey, Maryland, and that just led to more issues with the flooding and the wind and ugh.
yeah, but further north you went, you didn't have as much rain. It was actually north of the center of Sandy. You didn't see a whole lot of rain. I mean, we talked about Allentown, Pennsylvania, recording an 80 some mile an hour wind gust, and they only had about a little over an inch of rain, believe it or not,
Yeah,
with
the
Sandy.
wind was the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because all the rain was kind of on the southwest side of the storm as it came in.
Right. It was kind of lopsided as it came on shore.
Yeah, and that kind of happened because it made a transition from a tropical system to a almost like a nor'easter type system. So that's why you had that lopsidedness
And
happen.
and that's also the reason, something for our listeners to understand is that, that's probably why a lot of these winds were so far inland because like a tropical system is very usually tight and like the strongest winds are usually right around the eye wall. But as a storm, like you said, transitions and loses tropical characteristics, the winds have to go somewhere. So they kind of expand out and away from the center of the storm. And that's exactly what was happening in this case as Sandy was not quote weakening, but it was losing its tropical characteristics. It was turning more extratropical, and that's why the wind field expanded, and we were getting these 80, 90 mile an hour gusts, well away from the center.
Yeah, and don't forget, Brad, too, the way that sucked into a big trough diving through the Midwest, there was actually cold air that got ingested into the system.
It was October, yeah, late October or mid October, I guess.
Yeah, the mountains of West Virginia, we were talking about 1 to 2 feet
That's
of
crazy.
snow that actually occurred, and that's kind of unheard of, like to see that happen. People always kind of joke and say, "Oh, it's a snowicane or something, or a blizzicane, or whatever you want to call it." But this actually kind of did that in a way. Yeah, it wasn't a hurricane at that time. It made the transition, but
If it was cold enough, it snowed. Yeah, I mean, it's good timing if you like the snow out there, because yeah, like I said, 2 to 3 feet. I mean, it wasn't even it wasn't like I got a couple inches of snow here. I mean, it was just piles of it,
yeah,
and
I mean,
those mountains.
I think there was one area that recorded over 30 inches of
Yeah,
snow.
that's nuts.
I mean, come on. When does that ever happen? That just shows you the uh, rareness of this type of event. But I'm sure we could do a whole episode on on Sandy. I don't know. Have we done a full episode on Sandy?
Well, maybe yeah, maybe in October. Yeah, maybe in October when we actually get to the 10-year anniversary, we can do another podcast on it, and maybe we can have some other another guest in, or somebody that also went through it like you,
Right.
either forecasting or maybe somebody from WeatherWorks that's that
I
was
think maybe we bring in the return of our CEO, Frank
Mr.
Lombardo, for
Frank
that one.
Lombardo. That would be I think that
That
would
would
be a good
be
idea. Yeah.
excellent to
So
have
maybe we'll
him
do that in
as,
October.
because I still have that memory in my head when I asked him, Frank, what do you think is going to happen here with this storm? Like, how bad is it going to be? Like, and he was like, I have not ever seen a storm this strong impact the New Jersey shore.
And take this kind of a track.
And I'm thinking to myself, with all his knowledge and experience in the weather field since 1986, he's been developed WeatherWorks here, and he hasn't seen a storm this strong, and it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, I knew we were in trouble.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
when he mentioned that, and I was it added to the mystique, I guess, of the storm. But Brad, I think that pretty much ends it for this summer safety podcast. That's for sure.
Yeah, enjoy the summer, but yes, of course, take precautions. Of course, the lightning, the severe weather, sunscreen, heat, all that good stuff. But enjoy the summer, because before you know it, we'll be talking winter again and our winter outlook, and yeah, but
It's coming soon.
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so anyway, that is our podcast for this week. Remember, on the Weather Lounge, we have a new podcast every 2 weeks. So come back and listen to us again, and even visit some of the older episodes. There's some good ones in there that I'm sure you'll find interesting. And follow WeatherWorks on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So in the meantime, everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.